Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search builds great teams by connecting lawyers in Texas with career opportunities at small and boutique law firms. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel Hare back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. I hope you and your family are both healthy and safe, and that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that our latest Movie Verdicts episode is in your feed right now. Robert Callahan and I broke down the 2003 movie adaptation of the John Grisham novel, Runaway Jury, featuring John Cusack and Gene Hackman, two of my absolute favorites, Dustin Hoffman in it as well. It was a ton of fun, and it also gave Robert an opportunity to share several stories and insights about the importance of jury service, jury selection, and relationships between the judge and the jury. So check it out when you get a chance. It's in your feed right now. All right, today we head back to Houston, where our guest is Will Thomas. Will is a partner at the Houston-based litigation firm McDowell Hetherington, where he handles a wide array of complex cases throughout the country involving energy, construction, commercial contracts, insurance, consumer protection statutes, personal injury, and white-collar matters. And Will has been recognized as a Texas Super Lawyer Rising Star for the past 4 years. And as it happens, Will is also a huge fan of podcasts. So this was a perfect match to have him on the show today. All right, with that, let's hop into our conversation with Will Thomas on today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Will Thomas joins us right now. Will, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me on, Daniel.
Yeah, this is fun. I appreciate you taking the time. And the first thing I want to ask you to do is just tell us a little more about your practice and your firm. Let's start there. Would love to hear more about it.
Sure. So I'm a partner at the law firm McDowell Hetherington. We have 4 offices. We're in Northern California, Houston, Dallas, and then also Southern Florida. We're a boutique litigation firm. We have just over 50 lawyers. All we do is litigation, mostly business litigation. If there's something that we're known for, it's probably life insurance. We kind of have a specialty when it comes to life insurance. David McDowell was in-house at a life insurance company before sort of coming back out. And of course, now he's on the outside. And Tom Hetherington has been representing life insurance companies for many, many years now. And so if there's sort of one thing we're known for, it's life insurance. But, we do anything and everything. And in fact, most of my practice, though, it actually doesn't involve life insurance. I do a lot of work with oil and gas companies and just all the litigation that comes out of that. It really is amazing, the different types of litigation, and, no one case is the same. And, it could be property dispute and, the easement says one thing, the pipeline is going someplace else. Fraud by employees who are, trying to defraud the company for doing work on, pipeline, personal injury lawsuits, construction related lawsuits, just, a bit of everything that just kind of comes out of representing our clients.
Yeah. Wow. And so, it's interesting how you talked through that, because I'm thinking about how the firm began and maybe still core is around that life insurance practice, but then the diversity and the breadth with which you just described your practice and how it's grown around all these other things is interesting. And I'm sure that creates a lot of cross opportunities in terms of referrals and different things. The more things you can do, obviously.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. Well, and I want to ask you more about your practice. And before I do that, though, we're recording this on the 12th of November. People listen to this later can kind of context this back to that date. But tell us what's been going on within your firm recently around COVID and how you all have been working, and maybe some things that are impacting your practice or your clients. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So, we're 50 lawyers. We're in 4 offices. We're pretty lean when it comes to staffing and sort of, legal management. And so the transition for us to go to work from home, it was actually pretty easy, that transition itself. And that's something that we're really proud of, that we were sort of able to be light and nimble on our feet and adjust, because it just felt like it was overnight. And I just remember, mid-March, being in the office, and then the next day sort of hearing, the NBA shutting down, baseball's not going.
Yeah.
This is real. We're all going from, work from home, and, pulling files and books and stuff out of my office. And, it was a surreal time, but we adjusted really quickly. Right now, we're kind of in a bit of a hybrid, where if you want to come to the office, you can come to the office.
Yeah.
We probably have about a third to half our lawyers who come up here in Houston, and it's socially distanced, and people wear masks, and we take the protocols very seriously.
Right.
And then we have some people who are still at home. So we've kind of transitioned into this hybrid area. As far as the firm goes, it's dealing with COVID-19. With clients, it's interesting, if only just because I think back in March or April, when we heard the courts are going to be shutting down, we're not going to be doing jury trials anytime soon, no in-person depositions, no hearings. I think a lot of us were sort of looking at this going like, what are we going to be doing for the rest of the year?
Right. Yeah.
It really is. It's like, so much of my practice, we're a litigation boutique, you got to do litigation. You got to go places, site visits, see people, collect documents, argue hearings. And it was sort of a big question mark, but Daniel, I think this is probably going to be my busiest year that I've been a lawyer.
Wow.
Just because there's a lot of litigation that's come out of COVID-19.
Yeah.
The litigation is still there. The courts have adopted or adapted to being able to, handle litigation and keep cases, moving forward. And so you've had to be able to sort of handle all of that and be really efficient at it. So, what started, in the spring of, man, am I going to have a job at the end of the year? It's turned into, we're actively hiring, we're actively recruiting, we're trying to get more lawyers, just because there is a lot of work that's come out of COVID, in addition to all the work that we already had that's moving forward.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you guys have been able to pivot and adapt quickly and still have the workload that keeps everybody busy and all that. That's great to hear.
Busy's good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and as as you said, I think, and courts there where you are and around the state have at different levels adapted as well to hearings by Zoom or by remote video and so forth. What has that been like for you all, where you spend most of your time in practice, as well as maybe other types of whether it's mediations or arbitration, or anything else that we're not doing jury trials, obviously, or even bench trials. I've talked to a few people that have maybe got a bench trial in here or there. What's that looked like for you all?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up mediations. I have probably not had one case actually settle at mediation since COVID started. Okay. And I just, and I don't know, maybe it's just an outlier and it's just the nature of the case. I find that there's something said to having people go someplace and sit in a room and block it off for an entire day. And we're there, and we're not leaving. We're going to let the other side leave first. And kind of going through all of that. I'm not sure if it's better or worse though, because the resolutions we've got have been very good resolutions for our client. It's just it didn't all take place at mediation, and a lot of them have really sort of trickled over. Let's come back after a day. Let's come back after a week. Let's. We don't need to make the decision today. Let's kind of try to push this off. And so I feel like the virtual environment sort of allows you to kind of push back and reassess a lot easier than we're all getting on a plane and we're going to New York, and this is the authority that I have, and by golly, it's going to get done today.
Yeah.
The low cost of sort of, no, we're done, we'll come back, and coming back all together via Zoom. Even again, I had a mediation where it was like, I think everyone needs to hear from this person, and we bring that person back, and that person talks to the mediator,
Yeah.
and so I don't know if the resolutions have been materially affected. It's just the process has been a little bit different as far as mediation goes.
Right.
With depositions, I'm still not a believer in the virtual deposition. I think it's going to be a good tool post-COVID in that, look, if there's some random deponent that we need to go and depose in Delaware, and no one wants to get on a plane and fly to Delaware, we can do it, pretty easily. And I think we all kind of have this tool in our toolkit now. But, if I'm putting up a witness in a very significant case and it's a corporate representative, I really want to be in the room with that witness. And a lot of times that witness really wants to have their lawyer there with you. And
Right.
so,
Right.
For a lot of the witnesses that I put up, I've, isolated myself, taken a COVID test. If we don't do it here in the office, we'll go rent a hotel conference room, space out in the hotel conference room.
Yeah.
We'll both have our laptops there.
Right.
And there's something said for having the lawyer in the room with the witness. I feel the witness believes that they're empowered. My lawyer is right here with me. And also the process of, I'm getting up, I'm, putting on a suit, I'm going someplace. If it's not, a conference room in downtown Houston, if it's in a hotel room, there's just something about that mental shift that people go through that I feel like is important, because a lot of the depositions that I had sort of early on, it just, the Zoom environment sort of devolves into being sort of a very informal conversational environment.
Right.
That, if I was taking the deposition, I'm like, this is great, but
Yeah.
if not, if it's my witness, I don't want my witness, devolving into some sort of informal conversation. And,
Right.
and two, like, there's just a lot of distractions with the witnesses, if it's the dog or, there's kids in the house, and it's just, there's a lot of distractions, and I really need them focused and ready for game day. And the best way I've been able to handle that is, you're going to come to downtown Houston. We're going to rent a conference room. I'll take a COVID test. I will quarantine. I will isolate, and we'll do this safe. And I'm going to be in the room with you, and we're going to get through this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you are the first person to mention specifically here about getting into the same room for the deposition, and I think that's really, really interesting and smart. Makes sense to me, and I'm glad you shared it, because we talk a lot about how to utilize the technology, and certainly if you've got tips about what you've learned on how to do that, let's hear those. But just even getting things set up on the front end in terms of the strategic location and mindset that everyone has is probably could be lost while trying to figure out all the other kind of X's and O's of setting up the technology, I guess is what I'm.
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely right. There's a human factor there, and you got to account for that human factor. And it's depositions are different, and it's not a Zoom environment where we're all just talking and having a happy hour with family. It's game day, and it's time to get the gloves up and bob and weave where you need to. And that's, and again, I just saw it with the witnesses with, taking depositions or, being a third party and, that's watching depositions. It's just, the witnesses didn't perform at the same level that I thought they did pre-COVID. And that's what I've done to try to modify my practice a bit to help our people out.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything with regards to hearings, whether they be contested or sort of more mundane, uncontested stuff? What have you seen there?
Yeah, to me, the hearings haven't changed as much, except I'm having a lot more of them. And,
well, a lot easier to get them on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And the judges have been really well prepared, if only just because, as opposed to, again, I'm in Harris County. So if I'm going to go down to Harris County, a lot of times it's a cattle call, and we're all going down there, and the judge has however many parties in the room. and trying to work through everyone and get everyone, out the door at the set, at the end of the hearing time, and then on to the next part of the docket. When we have time that's reserved and it's like, hey, here's my 20 minutes. I have found that the judges are more attentive, more willing to listen. And as a litigant, I mean, I appreciate that. That's great. And so, like I said, I've seen more hearings, I think, post-COVID. I'm not sure there's any difference as far as the results go. You win some, you lose some, but that's the one thing that has actually sort of got me a little bit excited, sort of post-COVID, which is I think we could be having more hearings, and those hearings are going to be a little bit more meaningful if the judge carves out, here's your 20 minutes, and going forward there.
Well, cool. That's interesting stuff. So with regards to your practice, kind of setting COVID aside, what has been going on with either your clients or some of the industry areas that you mentioned that you specialize in and spend time in, that's been impacting you and your practice and your clients more recently? Again, kind of setting COVID aside, that's been a dominant one, obviously, but any changes in the laws, any changes in the laws or any changes with just what's going on economically that's having, an impact? What have you seen in the last 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a big, it's a big mix of things. I mean, it's hard to sort of ignore COVID and again, pre-March 2020, it just feels like it's prehistory. It's just, it really does. I mean, obviously the price of oil and gas now, that has a big effect on clients. That when oil and gas, the price of the barrel goes down, in a lot of ways, it means there's more to fight over. And we need to fight over certain things. It's harder to just, roll problems into the next deal. So, that's something that, we look at and we monitor. Starting next year, sort of the changes to how the Texas Supreme Court has, tried to streamline some of the cases as far as the discovery goes. I think that's going to be interesting. Yep. I really want to try to push more cases to trial. And if we can streamline discovery, especially on some of these low dollar disputes, it's just going to make it that much easier to start pushing a lot of these cases to trial, which I think is just critical for what we do. And it's just unfortunate when you start looking at a case in controversy where you go, it's 100,000, it's 250,000, and the client is immediately start thinking there's not a whole lot you can do for me, and it's upon us to say, no, there is. And in Texas right now, if we're lowering the threshold for the various, discovery levels, then that's going to help us be able to push these cases going forward into trial. So that's something that I'm excited about, moving forward, because, we got to start pushing more cases to trial. It's just critical for what we do. And especially on amounts that are smaller matters, it's just, the discovery just cannot continue to bog things down. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Well, cool. So as you think back to your first few years in practice, what's something that stands out that you learned then that has stuck with you and that you continue to make part of your practice that has been maybe key to your success as a lawyer?
Yeah. Daniel, I start my day early. I try to get in the office around 7 a.m. When I was an associate, I would actually try to get in a little bit earlier than that, if only just because the partner that I was primarily working on also got in the office really early.
Beat the partner in.
And I made it a point. I tried to make it a point to get there before he did. Yep. And the reason is just to get your day in order, just because every single day of practice, it's just something goes sideways. If someone files something, a client calls about something, and just to be able to start your day, before 8 o'clock, before 8:30, before 9 o'clock, before, clients, get to the office, that you can start your day on the right foot, making positive progress toward, the things that you have to do. Right. And, for being, the early bird gets the worm. It's helped me out a whole lot in my practice, if only just because I have one client right now that I probably do about 40% of my work on. And that client called a partner one day, and it was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was at my desk, Daniel, and I just remember hearing the phone ring in all the offices coming down the hallway before it got to mine. And he was looking for an associate to answer a question, and I happened to be in the office. I was
Yeah.
there, was able to answer the question. We got the case, spent about 2.5 years working that case up. We got a great result for the client, and then that's just led to a bunch of other opportunities. So
Wow.
for me, it's being in the office early, it's getting prepared, and being able to jump on those opportunities. So I start my day early. Obviously, people do start it a whole lot earlier than I do. I think Liz Fraley does as well.
Yeah.
Having listened to that podcast,
Yeah.
she's a pretty early starter, early riser. But I mean, I make it a point to be in the office. 7 a.m. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Wow. And it's so that people listening don't think that I'm somehow prompting that specific answer, because we have had, I think you're now maybe one of, you mentioned Liz, there's been like 2 or 3 others most recently who have shared something similar about the importance of getting your day started early, getting in early. And it's not because I have a get in early agenda or that I give you guys the answers to these questions ahead of time. This is real stuff. And I think when you start to hear a pattern, people that listening, that there's something to that. And
absolutely.
And if nothing else, I think it's you owe it to at least consider or try this stuff that is becoming consistent advice here. And getting in early is one of them.
Yep.
So thanks for that. Is there anything that maybe more recently that you were surprised by or learned that you're like, man, I wish someone would have mentioned that to me when I was getting started, or I wish I would have figured that out a little earlier? Anything like that?
Yeah, probably a couple of things. If I look back, I wish someone would tell me that you're not going to win them all. You're gonna lose motions. You're gonna lose cases. Things are not going to go the way that you expect them to. And I think for the types of people who are attracted to law school, very type A, very driven, individuals who have a lot of purpose. This is what I want to do. It's very easy to lose sight that there's someone else on the other side. And they're equally trying to advance, their case, and there's a judge and there's a jury, and, maybe the facts just don't line up the way you hope that they had lined up, and to not take it personally, to just realize you're going to lose some, you're not going to land some cases. You're not going to, win every motion in front of the judge, and that's okay. It's a fight, and you just got to get up and you got to do it. You got to do it over again. I felt like when I was early on in my practice, something wouldn't go right, and I just, sort of fret about it. Like, man, the judge just got it wrong, and really sort of fret about it, as opposed to like, yeah, he got it wrong. Let's move on to the next thing, and to be focused moving forward, and also to not let that be sort of a reflection of myself. Look, I tried hard. I made the best case I could. He didn't buy it.
Right.
And and move on, and that's the best you can do. So I'd be kind to yourself, and just realize you're not going to win them all. The other piece of advice that I would pass on to individuals who are starting up is, be very critical of your side, and be very critical of your story. Be very critical of the cases, be very critical of the facts. It's very easy to be handed a case and to be told a certain narrative from a client, and then you get into it and you go, well, that's not exactly true.
Right.
But you got to be asking questions the entire time. I've just had cases where, well, our employee did this and he did that. And then you're looking at the emails, you're going, I don't think that's what he did. I think it was actually something else. But it's very easy to buy into your own narrative.
Yeah.
It's very easy to buy into your own story. And it's very easy to not question that, because, clients a lot of times want to hear the right answers, and sometimes you can't give them the right answers. And then two, I don't want to find out that, hey, this set of facts that we had been, assuming turned out not to be true once we get way down into discovery.
Sure.
So be very, I don't want the other side to tell me the holes in my case. I want to know the holes in my case going forward at all points in time. So, be critical. And if you're critical of your own case, you're critical of your own cases, of the case law that you're citing, you're going to be very well prepared. And that's the most important thing of, I feel like in terms of practice is always being prepared. And the only way I can do that is by constantly critiquing, my own story and, what am I missing? And what's the law that I'm missing?
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's really, really good. Is there something that a young or new associate can do to impress you or to stand out or to kind of signal that, hey, this is someone to kind of keep an eye on, that they're headed in the right direction? What are maybe one or two things that kind of signal that for you?
Yeah, if an associate comes to me and they sort of have an original idea on the case, hey, I looked at these documents and I think this is maybe what's happening. Or, I looked at, this testimony and this guy was making references to so-and-so. I think we should go do a third party subpoena on that person. Have we considered, filing X or Y? And again, Daniel, the answer may be like, absolutely. And the client's not going to pay for that.
Right.
Or, but the fact that they're coming to me having sort of creativity, it shows they understand the case. They're processing what needs to be done.
Right.
And thinking through these problems as opposed to like, I give an assignment and say, look, we need to file a motion to dismiss. Okay, here's the motion to dismiss on the 3 points you wanted, Will. And it's like, that's great. And that's wonderful. But if you can come to me and go, look, I'm not sure we need to file this motion to dismiss. What I think we need to do is, X, Y, and Z. And you go, man, that's great. You're thinking through all of these problems. You're exercising, critical thought. And, maybe you have, you're providing extra creativity. So to me right there, you're sort of part of you're part of the team as opposed to this hierarchy of like, I provided you this assignment and you have returned this assignment and here are the typos in this assignment. It's like, no, this person is thinking about all of these matters critically, understanding how they relate and providing, thoughts up. And I think, it takes courage if you're a young lawyer to say, hey, partner or senior partner or even just senior associate, this is what I think, that takes courage. But to me, the fact that you do that it says a lot about you, even if that strategy isn't one that's adopted.
Yeah, and you mentioned courage because I was going to ask you, do you think, and it's a little bit of, I guess, an unfair question in terms of you're probably having to speculate some, but do you think that what holds associates back from doing exactly what you just described is a lack of courage or boldness in that they have thought through those things? They do have a creative idea, but they're just afraid for whatever reason to share it? Or do you think that it's that they are kind of acting more like that kind of cog in the pipeline or in the wheel and just kind of doing their job and not doing the creative thinking? Or where do you see that mostly, do you think?
I think it's a bit of both, and it kind of depends on the individual.
Right.
I think there are some people that are like, I don't really know. There's a bunch of smart people in the room and they haven't seen this issue. I don't know if I want to raise it. I think there are some people like that. I think there are other people that look at this job as being sort of a cog in the wheel and being like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Will tells me to draft a motion to dismiss and I draft a motion to dismiss. That is my job. That is what I do. With our firm culture though, what we try to tell our associates is, look, this is not lockstep. You are not a first year. You are not a second year. You are not a third year. You are an attorney that is capable of doing X or an attorney that's capable of doing Y. And if you show me that you can do X and you can do Y, you're going to go get those opportunities. But you have to show that you're capable of doing that. But I think there's a tendency for a number of people to just sort of default to, I have deadlines on other cases and, I got to get this done and here it is and it's done and I'm moving on to the next thing, as opposed to taking ownership of the case and understanding the file and, providing sort of that feedback up the chain.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. How would you advise an associate to start thinking about business development and client development? At what stage in their experience level or whatever should they start that process? And how would you advise them to do that?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I just remember as a first year being like, I'm never going to have business. I don't know anybody important. I don't know anybody in business. Like, why would anyone ever give me a case? Like that makes I wouldn't even give me a case, And so, I kind of had it just written off as like, well, I guess I'll just, work on other people's cases, my entire legal career. And maybe I'll get lucky and one of my law school classmates will, go in house and I'll have a client that way.
Right.
To me, the most important thing is to work really hard on your cases and show that you yourself have value. I feel very fortunate that I'm at a firm where the attorneys that I worked under, as I was sort of progressing as an associate, really said like, oh, well, we need to bring Will to this meeting because he knows the facts of the case.
Yeah,
I need to bring Will and have him on this client call because he understands the law of what we're trying to argue. And so if you're an associate and you really understand your case, you need to, the partner or the senior associate is going to want to bring you to those events where you are going to get that face time. And by sort of projecting like, here are the facts of the case, here's the law, this is what I think, then the in-house lawyers get to see you and get to see what you're capable of. And then, there's going to be times where they say, hey, I have this case. It's, kind of a dog of a case and it's not very much. Can Will help us out on this? And then you build your own relationship that way. So, right. For me, my advice is, just show your value. And if you show your value, hopefully you're at a firm, like I am, and I've been, very blessed to be where, the senior lawyers want to get you in front of the client because it's like, this is the person who has all the answers.
Yeah.
And if you're that person, it's going to get you that face time and then you're going to be able to develop that business.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned earlier that in the midst of the pandemic and everything going on, you all have been very, very busy and you have been growing and looking and hiring attorneys. I'd love to get your thoughts on that a little bit before we finish our time. So when you do that, when you're looking to bring on new attorneys, what are a couple of things that are most important for you in terms of what makes a good fit for your firm and your practice?
Yeah, I think it's someone who's willing to operate autonomously, and if they can just show that, look, I'm not here to be a cog in the machine. I want to be part of these cases. I want to fit into your team and to take ownership. If they can convince me of that, then they almost always have my vote when it comes to hiring. If I walk away with the impression of this person wants to come in and take charge,
yeah.
And run cases. And I see that in them. Yeah. That's something that is important to me as far as our hiring decision. And it's important in the interview. If I can get that from them that, look, they want to come here and they want to litigate and, they want to win and they want to work hard. If they can persuade me of that, then that's what's really important.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Are there things on resumes or things that you see that are either really harmful to a candidate versus something that's you really like to see on there that kind of triggers for you to say, hey, this might be someone that we should consider versus not?
Yeah, if there's something on there that's generally that can kind of show grit a little bit. So for young lawyers, if they're on multiple advocacy teams, it's like you didn't have to do advocacy. Mm-hmm. You probably could have gone through your entire law school career without having to be on those teams. But if you're on multiple teams, it's like, okay, this person has grit. If they wrote on the law review, something like that. Right. If they worked in law school, I had to work in law school for part of it. Yeah. To me, that's important because, again, it goes to that grit. If they're doing internships during the semester, not just during the summer, those are things like anything that you're doing that goes above and beyond just, reading the cases and going to lectures and taking exams. That's what I want to see. It's all the stuff sort of around the GPA that can be really important to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, the last thing I want to visit with you about before we close is work-life balance, because it's something that gets talked about a lot, obviously, not just in the legal profession, but I think especially so more recently. And I think COVID's put it on a whole other track as well. How do you look at that issue? And as especially young lawyers that are listening are trying to figure out, obviously they want to do well. They want to get in at 7 a.m. and be the person that answers that phone when the clients call in and the partner has a need. How do you talk to young lawyers about that, and what should be their mindset towards it?
Yeah, I think for young lawyers, you really, as far as the work-life balance, there is a balance, but at the same time too, a lot of it in the first few years is more work-oriented as opposed to life-oriented. And, it's just kind of how the balance
seasons of
goes.
Life, right?
Seasons of life. No, but it really is.
Yeah.
I believe that. It is sort of a season, which is, the practice of law. It is a practice. It is a trade. The only way to get better at practicing law is to do it. The only way to do it is to put in more time. And, you're not going to get the trial experiences unless you put in the time, and you've helped work up the case. And if you want to go to trial and become a better lawyer, that's also going to take a bunch of time. So if you want to be a better lawyer, the way to go about doing it is having to put in time, and, unfortunately, that's just kind of how this goes. And, and if you want to be a better writer, you're gonna have to write more. That all takes time. Better researcher, you're gonna have to research more. The different types of cases that you see, it's gonna make you a better lawyer, because I've seen this type of fact pattern in this case. In this case, this is what we did. All of that takes time. And so as a younger lawyer looking to build your skill set, I don't know a way around it other than to try to put in the time.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. Well, is there anything that we haven't touched on yet that you would want to share before we wrap up our time?
Yeah, Daniel, kind of going through all this just makes me kind of think and want to reiterate a message, and not to be just a total downer, but this is a hard job. This is not an easy job. It's not easy to do. If it was easy, then everyone would do it. Lawyers get compensated very well for what it is that they do. People look to you. There's a lot of stress in this job.
Right.
If you want to be a good lawyer, I feel like nowadays, especially with litigation, that means you need to be a good writer. It means you need to be good in the courtroom. You need to be creative to come up with, all sorts of, different resolutions. You need to be good at sales and marketing, because at the end of the day, that's kind of, that's where your business comes from, is persuading a client that, hey, I should take your case. And so there's a lot of skill sets that are involved in being a good lawyer. And it's just very easy, I feel like, to focus on one, which is, how do I make my writing better? How do I make my MSJ more persuasive? But it's only one skill set. And there's a lot that you need to be able to be a good lawyer. And it's a hard process. And, for me, being a young lawyer, when I was a young lawyer, still am a young lawyer.
You're still a very young lawyer.
still very young. I don't feel young. But coming up, I felt, I was very fortunate in that, in my firm with the associates, there was kind of a cluster of us. There's about 5 of us all around the same time and the same sort of year group. We would stay late, work late, and we would have things called night crew, and we would all order dinner, and we would have dinner together, and then we'd all go back to our offices and sort of keep working. And we had that camaraderie.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that has kept us together. And, those associates are now my partners. Yeah. And, we have that collegiality, we have that respect. We've gone through the trenches together.
Right.
And so as hard as this job is, having good people that you work with and having good people that you develop with and mature with is something that's really important. It's what makes the job, easier to handle.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of times, and for obvious reasons, people will choose to go to firms or go to jobs based mostly or all on the salary or the compensation or whatever it might be, the ability to be a partner or anything else. without, I think, sometimes giving enough thought to who are the people I'm going to be working with every day? Who is that cohort of people that I'm going to be doing, dinners with, and then going back to the office? And because it is such a hard job, because it is so stressful, because, there are so many mental health challenges that accompany the legal profession and so on and so forth, it's so critical to have those relationships and people around you. And so to at least be, spending time to think about those relationships and the people that you're going to be working with as you're maybe considering a change or where you're going to work. It's so important. I mean, it just is.
Absolutely. And so if people are interviewing, it's not just enough to say, well, here's the partner that I'm going to be working with. I mean, I would want to interview, if I was a young lawyer, the other young associates. Right. That's your cohort. Those are going to be the people who are going to be with you in the trenches every day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so good stuff. Well, we've got a few rapid fire questions to round out here. If you're ready, I'm going to hit you with those.
All right, let's do this.
All right. So name the one trait or characteristic that you most want to see in an associate.
Creativity.
Awesome.
Coming up with different solutions.
Yeah. What habit has been key to your success?
I have a journal that I sort of write out everything that I kind of need to do every single day. I write out every single case and things that need to get done in the next 24 to 48 hours for that case. And that's how I start my morning. It's a good way to examine all of my cases and to make sure that, I'm not letting a certain case slip to the back burner. So every day I write it out and every day I have a new page.
That's awesome. Awesome. Your favorite app or productivity tool?
I'm a terrible millennial in that I don't have a ton of these, but what I do use is like the Apple Notes, if only just because I'll be in the elevator or I'll be in the grocery store and I'll think of something about one of my cases and it's like, oh, that's a great idea. And I put it down, I write in my notes, and then I may not actually look at it again until I have the next bright idea. And I'm like, oh, I totally forgot about this.
Right.
But
right.
Probably Apple Notes and just, writing something down real quick.
Sure. No, that's important. Your favorite social distancing activity?
So during the pandemic, we got a dog. She's our pandemic pup.
Yeah.
And part of that is because my wife and I were like, we're never home. Why would we can never get a dog. And
right.
Of course, now that's changed. And so we got a dog, but just walking the dog, at the end of the day, that's just something that is just, it's a good way to decompress. And like I said, my dog doesn't care if I win or if I lose, or if I bring in a case. She wants to be walked with and she wants to be played with, and having that ability to decompress is great.
Yeah, absolutely. We did the same thing. We have a puppy that's like 12 weeks old. And lots of fun and a lot. First one for us as a family. And so it's interesting for sure.
That's great.
Your last one, favorite legal movie?
Probably Bridge of Spies with Tom Hanks.
Bridge of Spies. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
I've not seen it, so I need to.
It's very good. It's a total Tom Hanks type movie where, he's the unassuming insurance defense lawyer who gets called in to, defend a KGB spy. And then,
I have seen it. I don't know what I'm talking about. I was thinking about a different movie. I have seen that one. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's good. Yeah.
But that's our dream, Daniel, just doing some sort of, insurance defense practice. The next thing you know, you're involved in the middle of some sort of international Cold War plot of exchanging hostages or exchanging prisoners. I mean, who doesn't love that?
No. I mean, yeah, it seems like totally realistic. It happens to us all the time, right?
And it's based on a true story.
No, I know. Yeah,
I know.
That's right. Like, yeah,
it gives me hope that one day I can be, in East Berlin exchanging prisoners or something.
Yeah, that's right. Well, awesome. Well, I know that you are crazy busy, and I appreciate, and we all appreciate you taking the time to share with us. And so thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for doing this. It's been great to catch up.
Thanks, Daniel. Really appreciate it.
All right. My thanks again to Will Thomas for joining us on the show. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider doing two things? Would you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? And then would you rate and review the podcast in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts? And if you have suggestions or thoughts about the show, or if I could help you in any way, please email me, daniel@varsitysearch.com. Also, don't forget to check out Robert Callahan and me in our latest movie verdicts episode, Runaway Jury. It's in your feed right now. And finally, as we are still in the Thanksgiving spirit, I wanted to say thank you for listening to this show. It is incredibly fun and enjoyable to talk to our guests each week and to break down legal movies with Robert. We've done 57 of these now with this one, I believe. But it is most rewarding to know that so many of you have listened, learned, and benefited from the show. So thank you for giving us here at Varsity Search and Lone Star Lawyers the chance to make a difference. We appreciate it. All right, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel Hare with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.